First, I'd like to thank the board for allowing me to speak to you today. I know there's a very full agenda, so I will be thorough while also trying to be expedient. You should have in front of you the 2020 Arts and Cultural Progress Report. I hope that you have had a chance or will have a chance to read it and see all of the amazing work that the CRD has done in terms of arts and culture over the last year, and the work that we have been able to support as we do of arts and cultural organizations throughout the region. And it's also a beautiful report, so it should be a good read. Briefly today, I'd like to share with you the highlights within that report. I think you've received this the last few years as it's been developed since 2018 to demonstrate the value and impact of the activities and organizations funded by CRD Arts and Culture throughout the region. So in 2020, as you all know and have experienced, we lived through history, and our communities demonstrated resilience and creativity while pulling together to get through a global pandemic. Nowhere was that spirit more clearly on display than in the arts and cultural sector. This report tells some of those stories and backs it up with statistics. And I think you'll find it inspiring and get to see some of the work that has gone on behind the scenes by arts and cultural organizations that are very much looking forward to welcoming you back to in-person presentations in the coming months and year. So if we go to slide 2, please. So last year, the CRD Arts and Culture Support Service invested $2.49 million in arts programming. The Arts Commission funded 89 organizations and artist-led partnerships. And I think of note is that 13% of those grants were new applicants, even in a pandemic year. So we continue to have that innovative spirit in the arts. We continue to have 5 different grant streams, operating grants, which also now offer multi-year funding to provide stability to arts organizations, the incubator grants, equity grants, idea grants, and project grants. So these diverse streams ensure that the funding that the participating jurisdictions provide goes as far as possible and makes as big of impact to diverse arts organizations, both big and small, through the region. So if we go to slide 3, please. So despite COVID-19, organizations continue to produce and present virtual and distance formats. And I think when I made this presentation last year, I talked about how many of us were moving online and seeing arts organizations provide events online that allowed us to connect at a time when many of us were feeling disconnected, when people were feeling isolated. And the arts organizations in our region really did have that impact by allowing people to come together virtually and still express themselves and be a part of that expression. So 88% of organizations reported that they were able to continue operating with modifications, and arts organizations produced 3,377 events with 472,120 participants in a pandemic. Around 96% of audiences for these events did participate virtually, and those organizations through that period generated 3,318 jobs. So we can never underestimate the economic impact of arts and culture in our region as well. If we go to slide 4, please. So a few highlights. We continue to make progress on the CRD Arts and Culture Strategic Plan. And a few of the highlights from this year, we maintained consistent funding to arts organizations through COVID-19, which for many of these organizations was a lifeline. Given that earned revenue from most organizations was down, this funding was essential. After 3 years of pilot programs for our incubator and equity grants, they have now become core programs of the CRD Arts Service, which I think is great news as they fill a gap of funding for startup organizations and help them build capacity and also support communities that are often excluded or at risk of having barriers to accessing arts funding through other sources if it were not for these grant programs. In 2020, that included support for, among many other initiatives, a youth-run arts collective, a series of embroidery workshops designed to be as barrier-free as possible, a production of a short film about missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, trans, and two-spirit individuals. We also evaluated, or staff evaluated the equity grant pilot project and revealed that the program was a good step towards reducing systemic barriers, but further work remained. And so in 2020, we committed to applying an equity lens to the operations of the CRD Arts Commission and applying that to both our operations and granting through the formation of an equity advisory subcommittee. Finally, we did continue to do the work on the CRD strategic priority of seeking 100% participation in the CRD arts function. And so we've continued to outreach to non-participating jurisdictions by writing letters and offering presentations. And ultimately, we did make presentations to Colwood Council and Sydney Council, and we thank all of you for the correspondence as well as for inviting us to present. If we go to slide 5, please. So despite that arts orgs have faced the loss of space and revenue and had many challenges over the last year, our arts organizations in this region have endured, and they've safely brought us together throughout a very challenging time and shown once again how central and deeply significant arts and culture is to our diverse communities throughout the region. So I want to thank the Arts Commission members from 2020, Chair Colin Plant, Councillor Tara Ney, Councillor Megan Brame, Councillor Jerry Lemon, Councillor Sherry Epp, Councillor Carl Rossing, Councillor Dana Lajeunesse, and Wendy Gardner. And I'd also like to thank the incredible staff of the CRD Arts Service, particularly Vimala Jivanandam for her work on this project, as well as James Lamb, Manager of Arts Service, who is leaving the CRD. And so I just want to thank him in this forum for the great leadership of the Arts Service for many years.